Hi everyone, this is Bree Luna with Reading Rev, and today we're going to talk about how to determine where to begin in the Reading Rev Phonics Spelling and Morphology program based on your specific class data. So this is data from a 4th-5th split class, and you're going to see some interesting things because of that within their data. So step one is you're going to give your class the multisyllabic word inventory, part one. So part one is 28 words. You're going to want to give that in one day. And if your students in general do really well with that, the majority of your students do well with that part one, then the following day you're going to give part two. It's too much to give all in one day, but you can determine whether you have an entry point. If the majority of your class needs a lot of instruction in part one, you can wait for part two. If not, go ahead and give part two the following day. If you have a student who misses the first 5 on part one, then you're going to want to drop down and give them the developmental word inventory, which is single syllable words for the most part. Step two is you are going to grade your student test and use the analysis form to determine which patterns they missed within that test. And so you want to use this form for each student. You're just circling the patterns that they missed, and you are going to glean some big ideas from that. The next step is you're going to go back through. Now you have all of those analysis forms, and you're really going to just write down the names of your students that missed each pattern. So you're trying to see in your whole class where are the patterns that the majority of the students still need instruction on. So you can see with this group, they actually did fairly well on the part one assessment. So part two assessment was given, and you can see in the very beginning short vowels and those consonant blends, digraphs, and consonant cluster patterns that they did not have very many students that needed that at all. You'll also notice that up in the right hand corner, I was just jotting notes about students that I saw some interesting things that might be flags for working memory or processing or phonological or phonemic awareness issues. So I'm just very generally taking notes on that. So for this class, they actually did a fairly good job on the beginning patterns. So I'm always going to review closed and open syllables no matter what their data shows, because so many patterns rely on that mastery for more complicated patterns later on in the sequence. So I'm going to go ahead and just spend 2 weeks. It's probably at the beginning of the year. I also want to introduce them to the systems of Reading Rev program and just the language and the activities that they're going to be doing. So this is kind of a good review and ease in, build some success and some confidence. So I'm going to do week 1 and 2 reviewing all of the closed syllable patterns. Then week 3, I'm going to review the long patterns of open and magic E. Notice that I even combined those into 1 week because I really only just had a handful of kids that didn't master that. I'm probably going to give those few students some extra support in small group for those patterns, but I don't want to spend the entire week for open syllables and an entire week for magic E syllables when really there are very few kids in the class that didn't show mastery on that. So that's week 3. Then week 4, I did have a pretty significant group of kids that were not doing the doubling suffix rule. So I would probably do a little combining of ED and doubling, just talking about how suffixes change the root word spelling. And then I would do 1 week of just reviewing all of the predictable vowel teams. So we just had enough kids that were mixing up vowel teams here and there for the predictable ones that I would go ahead and just do 1 week of that. Then I look at R-controlled and consonant LE. I could make a decision about that. I really only have a handful of kids. They're the same kids that are going to be getting small group instruction to fill holes. So I could decide maybe I go ahead and do those just in small group for R-controlled and consonant LE. I could also do whole group and add 1 week of reviewing both of those. I think that these are the same kids. I'm wondering if these are possibly the 4th grade group, and I could do that in small group instruction. Now here is where I look at the class data, and I notice that a great majority of my kids are falling down on unpredictable vowel teams. So really I'm going to do the whole class for the whole week for the IE. I had a ton of kids mixing up that unpredictable vowel team. And then I did have a handful of students that still needed the Y to I. I might do 1 week of reviewing all of those suffix patterns. So the double, drop, and change, I could just do a week of making sure everyone has mastered those, because that is a typical challenge for a lot of intermediate students. And then I break in, and week 8 is where I would just start my normal instruction. So I'm now at 2 months of instruction, but I'm already at week 22 of the Reading Rev program. So thinking that I don't want to go week by week for this group of students, because most of them have already mastered or are already proficient in a lot of these patterns. So keeping in mind that this is a tier 1 3rd grade program, so I'm definitely going to be able to use it to plug these gaps and to fill these holes with students, but I really want to be very mindful that I'm not teaching things that my students already know. Okay, now let's take a look at the handful of students that throughout all of those assessments, I noticed that the same students were popping up over and over again for those basic skills or the basic patterns, and I want to make sure that their foundational skills are intact. So this is just an encoding assessment. I want to check in these kids that are having significant spelling issues. Whatever happens in reading, whatever problems happen in reading, they show up significantly in spelling most of the time. And so I want to make sure that I'm not missing students that might have a decoding or a phonological or phonemic awareness issue. So these are the students that I'm going to pull and do some diagnostic assessments and really make sure that I know exactly where they are in decoding and PA. So based on data and observation, I would make sure that I am getting flexible, skill-based small group instruction for these students. They still have significant gaps, and I would also take a look at their decoding assessment and their past to see what they need in order to target their instruction in small group. I also noticed there were 3 students that did almost all of the encoding assessment correctly, and so I want to make sure that I am challenging those students and giving them small group instruction in a way that advances their knowledge. So just this is a reminder that you always want to teach the closed and open syllable pattern, because it determines pronunciation, it determines spelling in multisyllabic words that have more complicated patterns. It determines spelling, and it impacts spelling with words with suffixes and in morphology, and it impacts lots of other patterns like consonant LE as well. So making sure that I never skip the closed and open syllable review. So for this group, here's just a quick snapshot of the patterns that I would teach. So I would, in week 1, combine all of those first 4 units, and I would just take what they need from that. So I might just do a few slides from each of the slide deck. I might pick the pages out of the student workbook, or even skip that and just have them add those notes into their Everything Reading Notebook. Week 2, I would do floss, CK, and cat kite. I would also just embed and make sure that I'm tuning into the phonics check-in and making sure that all of my students are proficient in that. And if they're not, then those would dictate my small group instruction the following week. Week 3, I'm doing long vowel patterns, open syllables, and magic E. I'm also having them tune in to the short versus long vowels. It's always about the vowels. So I would spend a week really talking about short versus long. And then week 4, I would do the doubling spelling pattern, which the whole group would benefit from those as well. So for this group, part 1 was really just a review and small group instruction. I'm really breaking into the Reading Rev program in part 2 for the majority of the year whole group instruction.